It's 1 p.m. It's time to go around the world of business. This was coming your way in the next 55 minutes. We start from Nigeria, where the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria have said that 767 companies were shut down in 2023. In Egypt, there's a rate hike, 600 basis points. And in Zimbabwe, assurances of restructuring debt talks still on, in spite of sanctions from the United States. Good afternoon. Welcome to Business Incorporated right here on Channels Television. I'm Ini John McQuan. We start from the global space. As usual, oil prices gained on Wednesday as concerns about demand growth in China, which is the world's biggest crude importer, clashed with signs of supply tightness amid output cuts by major producers. Prices were also supported by a weaker US dollar, which helps demand for buyers paying in other currencies. Brent crude futures fell 13 cents to $81.91 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate was up right there at $78.04 a barrel. China's economic growth target for 2024 of around 5% set on Tuesday lacked big-ticket stimulus plans to prop up the country's struggling economy, which increased concerns that demand growth in the country may lag this year. The risk of nature of the recent trading was underscored by the fall in Treasury yields, which also pressured oil prices. Gold prices hit a record high on Tuesday on rising bets for U.S. interest rate cuts in June. Still, oil prices were supported by falling U.S. dollar and the announcement on Sunday that the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, as OPEC Plus, extend their output cut of 2.2 million barrels per day until the end of the second quarter. The extension has created some supply tightness, particularly in the Asian market, along with the disruption in oil tanker movement as a result of the Red Sea attacks by the Houthi militia in Yemen that has tied up barrels in transit. In the grain space, Chicago soybean and corn futures were flat on Wednesday, hovering near three-year lows ahead of a key USDA report. As South American harvest pressure continues to drag the market, wheat slipped after ending lower in the previous session. Traders are awaiting the U.S. Department of Agriculture, that's the USDA, monthly supply and demand report, which is set to be released on Friday, to assess the latest estimates on corn and soy production in South America. The most active soybean contract on the Chicago Board of Trade held its ground at tossing change at $11.50 for a quarter of a bushel. CBOT for corn was flat at $4.26 for three-quarter of a bushel. Wheat dropped 0.45% to $5.48 for half a bushel. Chinese importers are believed to have purchased at least 65,000 metric tons of animal feed corn from Ukraine in deals on Monday, and it appears prices have dropped enough where China has engaged as a buyer. Metals now near a record high peak in the previous session as hopes for U.S. rates easing by mid-year amount, while traders await remarks on the economy's health from the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Spot gold edged down 0.1% at $2,126.13 per ounce, and U.S. gold futures also went down 0.4% to $2,134.30. Spot prices hit a record peak of $2,141.59 per ounce overnight on Tuesday, rallying for a fifth straight session. Gold's rally is sentiment-driven, which was triggered by last week's poor U.S. economic data that gave little more clarity for a June rate cut according to observers. And also adding to that, we see that sports platinum rose 0.4% to $884.16 per ounce. Palladium rose also 1% to $958.20, while silver dropped 0.3% to $23.63. Traders are weighing in risks of the U.S. economic health in a high interest rate environment and will be turning into Powell's first day of semi-annual congressional testimony for more clarity on the issues. We come to Nigeria, where the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria has disclosed that 767 manufacturing companies shut down, while 335 others became distressed due to multi-dimensional challenges in the year 2023. The Director General of MAN, Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadri, warns that the proposed implementation of the newly introduced Expert Rate Employment Levy, that's the EEL, will further aggravate the already distressing situation. Mr. Ajayi-Kadri raised the alarm following the controversy being generated by EEL, which stipulates a mandatory annual levy of between $10,000 and $15,000 imposed by the federal government on employers hiring expatriate workers, which will come into effect from March the 15th. Mr. Ajayi-Kadri argues that the EEL would further ruin the confidence that President Bola Tinubu is striving to build among domestic and foreign investors. Expatriates in Nigeria currently pay more than $22,000 for CRPAC. The sector cannot afford another disincentive to the increased investment and portfolio expansion, according to the DG of MAN. So now we stay on some of those issues that have led to the shutdown of 767 manufacturing companies in Nigeria in 2023 and its power. And these days, it seems it's even getting worse. It's been in the news. I'm sure you've been following it. Even if you weren't following it, you'll be feeling it. But we have someone who has proposed a new strategy to handle it. I guess there's no harm in talking about it, and let's see if it actually holds the solution to it. So joining us for this conversation is Dr. Ayodele Oni. He's a partner at Bloomfield Law Practice, and he just shared new ideas which could work for us. Dr. Oni, good afternoon, and thank you for this time and for accepting to share your idea with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So before we go to that solution that you are proposing, we've seen, I think one of the most recent news we've seen when it comes to power generation, apart from the issue of subsidies, that generation has been faced with the challenge of gas supply. When you talk to discos, this is the major challenge that they pose. That's why we do not have 24-hour electricity in the country. What have you found in writing of your books, in your research and your interaction in the power sector about this issue of gas supply for electricity?
Okay, first, a few things. One, it's historical. Historically, the gas companies have been owed huge sums. The government has paid some of that. Over time, government has been paying some of that. But as government pays, you then have some of it outstanding. So government pays after a few years. They pay for, say, the last 2 years. But you then have a 1 or 2 year arrears again. And now what led to that problem is also historical. For a long time, gas producers were forced to sell gas to the PHCN. In some cases, they were forced to sell at less than the cost of production. In other cases, they will sell and they will not get paid. So there was that huge debt owed prior to privatization, unbundling, and the unbundling and the subsequent privatization. So that has just lingered for a while. And you could also add the fact that you remember that gas is a pass-through in power. So power tariffs must factor gas prices. So if the tariff doesn't factor the gas price and the tariff is low, then it means the generation companies won't even be able to pay the gas producers. So all of these have compounded the problem over time. I know government is doing a lot to ensure that this goes away, but if it's taking so long, it wouldn't go away in one day. So I think that's what the challenge is with gas. And also some would say dollarized pricing.
So does this bring the conversation of subsidy? Because when you talk to Discos also, they want a cost-reflective tariff. But, I mean, then the consumers want a service-reflective tariff. So we don't know where to start so that we can meet up, because they need the tariff, to get you the service. And then the consumers are saying, well, you have not been giving us the service. Why should we increase our tariff? And then we also have the talks about subsidy, which the IMF has even weighed into recently.
Okay, so it's interesting. Some would say it's a chicken and egg. The Discos say they need money to be able to provide quality service. And we consumers say, if we don't see quality service, why should we pay so much? But I think what the NERC has done, the regulator has done, is a service-based tariff system where it's based on the quality of service. Everyone is now in bands such that if you get a particular number of hours of electricity, you pay the highest band, and then it graduates from the lowest to the highest, or cascades down from the highest to the lowest based on the quality of service. Now, because we're talking about 10 years now, or about 10 years when the privatization ended. So many of these excuses should be over now, because a lot has been done in terms of interventions and all of those. So I think that tariffs need to be fair first, but Discos then need to be efficient to be able to benefit from the highest level of tariffs. The services need to be good for you to benefit from the highest level of tariffs. I know Discos are in business to make money, so tariffs need to make sense. Minimum tariffs should at least be cost reflective and allow for some margin, while the highest should be based on efficiency and quality of service. I think that can be a middle point. And in terms of the subsidy you mentioned, the truth is that if you look at the 2024 multi-year tariff order, the order issued to each market participant, each disco, each genco, that's each distribution company, each generation company, it specifies, particularly for the discos, what is substantially higher than what we are currently paying. That's where subsidy comes in, and it's been like that for a while. Maybe it's supposed to be like 200 naira per kilowatt hour, but government says that these guys are already suffering. There's a lot around some of the economic decisions being taken, which are not necessarily bad decisions. It's just that some of these decisions should have been taken many years ago. Then if you now take all of these difficult decisions at the same time, this is what you will see. Unless, of course, government now provides means to ameliorate that suffering. And then stuff like additional transport options and all of those. Now, the thing around subsidies is that what we are paying is not what we actually ought to pay. It's not the actual tariff. There's a margin. So government pays that margin. That's where the subsidy is. You understand? And I know the minister thinks that should stop. But it's difficult to add that to the challenge Nigerians are currently facing. And I think that's why the federal government still appears to want to continue to pay that difference between what the actual tariff should be and what the Electricity Commission has allowed the discos receive from consumers. So that's where it is. Whether it's sustainable in the long term is a different conversation anyway.
Yes, I mean, because as you noted, the removal of petrol subsidy, removal or not, because I mean, that still has some questions. The effect is still here with us. I don't think the economy has gone past that yet. But help us to understand this issue of distribution companies not failing to distribute generation that has been given to them. I know, I mean, this is a common conversation, but help us to understand it. What happens and why, you think it happens?
Okay, so when distribution companies receive electricity, they have feeders in different areas. Electricity comes into the feeders and then they are able to distribute. But if you have an area where they have serious commercial and collection challenges, they wouldn't want to distribute, or they wouldn't want to get electricity come into the feeder in that area, because they then have to pay for it, whether or not, there's a minimum amount. Now it's almost 100% for all of the distribution companies. So if you receive 200 megawatts, you have to pay for 200 megawatts. But if you're unable to collect, it goes into the feeder and you distribute it in a particular area where people do not pay. You still have to pay the value for the 200 megawatts to NBED, the GENCO. It flows from down up. You and I pay the disco then pays everyone else. I mean, there's a market arrangement for that. So they're saying, why should I receive power or receive load when the guys I'm going to distribute to are not going to pay me? I either have collection issues or have commercial or both issues in those areas. That's why I was talking about the concept I think I discussed with you earlier, to ensure that people then pay.
Strategy, you call it.
Yes, the Oluomo strategy. And if you look at the NURTW, for example, they have an enforcement mechanism where everyone is whipped into shape. So I was thinking of the way we could adopt or adapt that in this sub-franchising, where discos can sub-franchise in certain areas to guys who are the main guys, or have some form of arrangement. In an Oshodi, in an Agege, there are guys who are enforcers. And if people hear this guy is going to come and enforce payment, everyone sits tight. I think in certain areas, that sort of concept, it can be fine-tuned, may work. And I think that might be the overarching idea behind sub-franchising, to ensure that you have guys who can enforce certain things, particularly around payment, issues around metering, and ensuring that people do not steal electricity, especially from a metering perspective. That's it. It's simple. That's the Oluomo concept or strategy, where you find with bus drivers, the NURTW, and they enforce and they get things done, and they achieve results. So I think we can borrow that concept for some areas in Nigeria.
What about Dr. Oni, if we look outside Nigeria and say, how do these Western worlds do? I mean, over there, if you don't pay, obviously, you can't have power. They don't need, enforcement and, any of this strategy. What can we tap from those people to make this chain work more effectively?
Okay, I think many things also relate to the broader economy. Because you'd find out that very recently, if you read the news in the UK, people have now resorted to stealing electricity theft. There's been reports. Prior to now, we didn't hear it. People just saw it as part of life. You earn an income, you pay your bills. But energy bills, until the government also intervened, had gone out of hand. Things had skyrocketed. So one, it's orientation. People appreciating that electricity is not a social service or a social good. What you have or what you should have is access. And then you are able to manage your usage. That's why when you visit your friends in the UK, once you're leaving a room, they are screaming, please shut that light or switch off that bulb. So it's first orientation. People need to understand. Secondly, people feel that because, and that's one thing we can borrow from them, we need reorientation on certain things. Secondly, I think it's a broader economic issue. If people earn sufficiently, or if people have jobs, then they have revenues to be able to earn. In those countries, you find out that people there's dignity of labor. So people will do certain jobs we won't want to do, and then earn enough to be able to pay their bills. That's another thing. Another thing they've done is, over time, technology has played a critical role, where remotely, stuff like SCADA we're now looking at, or energy management systems, you can remotely monitor energy use and use data and say, normally every month this area, this street, this house, this residence will use 500 USD. Why is it 100 in the last 2 months? And then you can go and make your findings. And another thing they do over there is that laws are enforced. I always say to my friends who are non-Nigerians in particular, that Nigeria has some of the best policies, some of the best laws. Everything falls when it comes to implementation. So if I know the right person, the law is not applied the way it should be applied. You know, I just get a slap on the wrist rather than being made to go through the entire spectrum of the law or of criminal procedure. You know, it's good that the Electricity Act does have more copious provisions and very severe provisions around electricity theft. But before now, we had laws around stealing or damaging infrastructure, you know, public infrastructure. We had the Miscellaneous Offences Act, but did anyone get convicted? That's it. So it's making sure your laws work. You know, over there, laws work. So people are scared. Human beings are the same everywhere. I say it's just the society and the systems you have in place that ensure that people do not breach the law. So it's orientation, is investment in technology, is ensuring that when people breach the law, they get punished for it. Those are the things I see. I think we've got brilliant people, brilliant policies. It's just now that implementation that is missing.
Yeah, well, not a new perception, Dr. Oni, but well, it's one we'll keep talking about. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Dr. Ayodele Oni, partner at Bloomfield Law Practice.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, now let's head to the market, and it's good to have Anete back after some time off and chilling at home or wherever he chose to. Well, Anete, I think it's time for you to get back to work and to get back into the market especially. How's the market looking at intraday?
Well, for the market, of course, you know, we always start with markets across the African continent, and it's kind of a very pretty picture, if I would put it. Nigeria's stock market is still maintaining that positive opening, which started the week on Monday, and then of course we've pulled back from the 100,000 points which we were.
Yeah, but we're getting back there. I think we're 99 now. 99,
I would say we're not doing so bad, especially when you look at the year-to-date performance at 32.7%. So far, Nigeria's stock market, of course, you better believe that it is still the world's best performing stock market as of last week. So now let's get more details about the regional African continent's major stock exchanges. I'm talking about the #1 performing stock market across the world, Nigeria's stock market, at 99,436.13 points for the index. And at intraday, it was up by about 0.25%. Now, positive sentiment is across the African continent, particularly these ones where you see here, but we saw a pullback for Kenya. For South Africa, this is 1.07% for that, the second, the Nigeria's contender in terms of economy. That's this, Africa's second biggest economy. Now let's look at the other side of that market, Egypt Stock Exchange. That's the EGX 30. It was about 3.84. That's the biggest gain among the three that we just mentioned, while we saw a slight pullback for Kenya's stock market, 0.09%. Now, let's talk about the fixed income market, especially when we're looking at Nigeria's market. We'll be talking to Ebube Uneze, who will be giving us details about the fixed income market. Especially yesterday, we saw that the Naira, following the announcement by the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange, Binance, announcing that it will be pulling out its service, it will be ending its service, of Naira service by March the 8th, but with effect from yesterday, Tuesday, that it would also be stopping Naira deposit. But we'll be talking more about the fixed income market, liquidity level. So let's bring in Ebube Uneze, FX dealer at Access Bank, to give us more details about this at intraday. Thank you for joining us, Ebube.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. So now, at the moment as we speak, there is a Treasury bills auction being carried out today. And just about 2 days ago, we saw the Debt Management Office, on behalf of the federal government, bringing out, that's the monthly FGN savings bond auction. So now give us details about these two. How is it affecting investors' appetite as we speak?
Thank you very much. So, as you rightly mentioned, the DMO is conducting an NTB auction where a total of about 337 billion is on offer across the standard maturities. Our expectation, given where system liquidity is that or the conventional expectation would be that DMO would sell what is exactly on offer, given where system liquidity is. However, judging by the past performances, both the DMO at the last auction and the central bank last week at the OMO auction, there's a likelihood that the DMO might sell more than is on offer. The general market consensus is that the stop rates are going to inch up across the standard maturities, with the 1 year stop rates closing anywhere between 20 and 21%. On the savings bond auction, as the DMO always does, we saw them open a savings bond auction on Monday, offering across the standard maturities of 2 year and 3 years. The coupon on the 2 year is put at 15.09%, while the coupon on the 3 year bond is put at 16.09%. Comparing this to the current yields on the 2 year bonds and 3 year 2026 bond and 2027 bond respectively, which are trading at 17.5% and 17.8%, one can opine that the subscription level at the savings bond might not be as expected. However, we'll continue to watch as they build the books and see what the results print at by next week Monday. Just to put in context, in February's auction at the savings bond, we had a total of 841 million naira that was sold on the 2 year bond, while a total of about 1.5 billion was sold on the 3 year bond. Given where other alternative instruments are trading, my anticipation is that we might just have at best this same performance that we had last month reoccur in this month's savings bond auction.
All right. So let's talk to the currency side of the market. Yesterday, at the close of Tuesday's trading, the Naira, it fell by about 4.26% to about well over 1,600. So now this is coming just as Binance, that's the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange, announced that in Nigeria, of course, we know that there was a clampdown by the federal government on the exchange for several factors or reasons. Now, the Naira pulling back, what is the level of the Naira as we speak?
All right, thank you very much. So today, opening the market, we saw trades at the 1,600 levels. We've seen trades between 1.6 to 1.610 today. Comparing on a day-on-day from the beginning of the week, we've seen the NIFEX, as you rightly pointed out, depreciates slightly. On Monday, the NIFEX printed at 8,547 naira to $1, and yesterday it depreciated by about 20 naira to 1,566 naira to $1. On the flip side, we've seen market liquidity improve between Monday and Tuesday. On Monday, the market liquidity printed at about $178 million, and yesterday we saw a significant improvement to $297 million. This can be attributed to the influx of foreign portfolio investors who are seeking to participate in today's auctions. The central bank, as you rightly pointed, is doing everything within its powers, using the monetary tools at its disposition to ensure that there's stability in the foreign exchange market. And we'll continue to watch that space to see how market participants trade in line with some of these policies which the central bank is bringing out.
Okay. Right, thank you so much, Ebube. I know you're willing to give us more details, but of course, time is not too friendly with us. But we thank you for your analysis on the fixed income market and for currencies at intraday.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was Ebube Uneze, FX dealer at Access Bank for the fixed income market. Now, let's head over to the Middle East market. We see negative trading sentiment at intraday. Like I mentioned, all of these are intraday figures before the close of Wednesday's trading session. Now, both the Abu Dhabi and the Dubai FM, both on the United Arab Emirates exchange, were in the red. Let's move over to the other side of this market. This was the only gainer at intraday, 0.76%. That's for the Saudi Tadawul. That's the Middle East biggest market, making that alone gain, while Qatar Stock Exchange was down by 0.76%. Now, let's move over for the US market, where we see that the futures rising after the sell-off. This is because investors are awaiting a testimony from the country's Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, who will be they will be seeking additional clarity on where the central bank stands on monetary policy and looking for clues on the pace and timing of anticipated rate cuts for this year. Now, let's look at the markets index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, that's where the industrials are listed there, 0.22% increase. The Standard & Poor's S&P 500 up 0.35%, while the Nasdaq futures 0.70%. So that's for today. Of course, we will be looking at many other factors for this for the US market, the world's biggest market. Now, for our review of Tuesday's trading, let's join Maria Bird for details of that trading session.
The U.S. stock market closed in a sea of red on Tuesday, as the Dow Jones was down at 1.04%, the S&P 500 down at 1.02%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq leading the deficits at 1.65% down. This was caused by what many are seeing as major companies having a downfall. As Super Tuesday in the U.S., with the political scene being at its height, the stock market could not hold its upward swing, as companies like Tesla and Apple showed major declines. Apple showing that it had a major decrease in its sales in China. This has many investors concerned that we might not see interest rate cuts anytime soon.
Yep. So that was our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, giving us details about the U.S. market at the close of Tuesday's trading session. So, the U.S. market, all eyes is always on that market, because when
the election too.
Exactly, the elections.
Also a factor to consider, and the expectation of when the rate cut will start. I think they're putting it at June now. Yeah. That will also sway investor sentiment.
And of course, that will now decide where the pendulum swings for other markets around the world.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Anita.
Pleasure.
Let's head to London now, and it's a big day, the budget speech. I believe we should have that by now. Juliana joins us to give us details of that yesterday. While we had that conversation yesterday, and she did say, I think about 12:30 is when that budget speech was supposed to hold, seeing that the UK is an hour behind Nigeria at this time. Hi, Juliana. Good afternoon. Do we have, apart from the speculations we spoke on yesterday, do we have the details of the budget speech now?
Good afternoon, Oh, okay. Sorry, Ini, I had about 4 people talking in my ear just now, including 5. But yes, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, literally just as I stepped into the studio, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, just got on his feet in a pretty jam-packed Palace of Westminster. Of course, the spring budget, the all-important fiscal statement, the last fiscal statement we expect of this Conservative government, is being announced now, and it is very important because we know it is likely going to change, well, the fallout of it is going to be a huge, significant moment for millions of people across the country. Unfortunately, of course, the Chancellor is just speaking, so I can't exactly relay what he is going to say. However, because it is such an important fiscal statement, we have been hearing about what is going to be inside alongside it for the past 24 to 48 hours. Now, what I mentioned to you yesterday, Inni, is that if you look at all polls, all national polls in this country, it does show that the Conservative government are about 20 points behind. In fact, the latest poll that I looked at this morning showed the Tory party polling at a 45-year low, which is why we are expecting there to be some sort of significant giveaway for taxpayers in the budget, which is being unveiled now. Now, I think traditional Conservative voters would want there to be a cut in income tax. Now, income tax is basically what it says it is, a tax that you get on your income. It can be as much as 45% if you are one of the highest earners. It's about 20% if you're on minimum wage. Is that going to be cut? We're not expecting that to happen, because according to all of the media reports, there is going to be a 2 pence per pound cut in the amount people pay on national insurance. Is that going to be enough to woo back some voters? We're not sure. Other parts of the budget we're expecting to be announced today is that air passenger duty is going to be increased for business class passengers. I know especially those who are fortunate in Nigeria do like to come here on Virgin and BA on business class. You're going to be paying hundreds of pounds a year more on that. Also, oil and gas windfall. Now, you remember, Inni, during the pandemic, but particularly after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that the Conservative government were basically forced into providing some sort of, or putting in, or pushing up, shall I say, some sort of levy on the amount that oil and gas companies pay into the coffers in the UK. Currently at 25%, that's brought in about £2.6 billion a year. We're expecting an increase of that. Also, childcare. Now, we're having massive issues with our labour market to kind of boost the appeal of mothers going back into the labour market. There is expected to be an announcement of an expansion of free childcare spaces. That is definitely going to be some sort of winner or winning headline for the Conservatives. And then vaping as well, electronic cigarettes. They seem to have had a massive grip on British society. We're expecting there to be some sort of tax on vaping in the UK before, of course, it is banned later in the year by Rishi Sunak. And the list goes on and on. Again, this is all speculation because we don't know what the Chancellor is saying. He is speaking now, but significantly important, as I said, we are going to the ballot box. Some say as early as the 2nd of May. That's the first date we've heard, although it's all speculation at the moment. This budget is the last-ditch attempt for the Conservative government to try and win back support, to cut taxes, which they know is going to help people with the cost of living. But then, of course, it's that delicate fiscal balance, because if you cut taxes, you have to increase what you're getting elsewhere, and there are suggestions that perhaps there could be a cut to public spending, public services spending, from 1% currently to 0.75%. So it's all going to come out in the wash, but tomorrow when we speak, Inni, I'll be able to give you a much fuller breakdown of what has been announced today.
Yeah, well, the talk of fuel duty cuts, is that also part of speculations from the budget?
Oh, definitely. I think, fuel duty is always going to be a massive political talking point around a budget, because fuel duty is one of the biggest revenue earners for this government. Of course, what that is basically a tax that they put on petrol and diesel. I think because it is so political, and because, of course, if you are somebody who earns a lot of money, you typically have a gas-guzzling car, one of those big 4x4 Range Rovers or any other vehicle. And, of course, you usually put more money in your vehicle if you've got one of those big cars. So the reason why there are suggestions that a freeze in fuel duty is only going to help the rich is because people think they don't need that help anymore. They're the ones who spend more money on petrol. So basically, if you're freezing that, then you're helping them. It has been frozen since 2011. It is likely that it is going to be frozen again. But yes, this is a very politically sensitive spring budget, not just because we are still going through a cost of living crisis, but But as I said, this is the last-ditch attempt. So, of course, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, will want to appease a typical Tory voter. He's also going to have to do his best to try and get Labour supporters or SNP supporters or Liberal Democrat supporters on the side of the Conservatives. A really tough hill to climb.
Yeah, a tough one for the politicians. Well, they chose the job. But let's look at the market at intraday. How's that looking?
Yeah, this has, of course, been snapped before the budget. So I'm sure as soon as Jeremy Hunt changes, those numbers are going up and down. But from the last time we checked, the FTSE All-Share is up 0.41%. The FTSE 100, the blue chip index, that's up 0.28%. And the FTSE 250, the domestic market, that's up 0.75% at intraday. And in the currencies market, the British pound is, as we last checked, trading up against the US dollar by 0.16%, though trading down against the euro by 0.03%. And the British pound at intraday down against the Japanese yen by 0.03% in a.
Yeah, thank you so much, Juliana. I mean, as you said, by the end of the speech, a lot of numbers will change, but we'll certainly get that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Berlin now, where the German government has unveiled the pension reform plan to stabilize a strained pension system. Wonder what they mean by that, but we have Chiponda Chimbelu now joining us from Berlin to give us the details. Hi, Chip. Good afternoon. What's this about strained pension system?
Thanks for having me. Well, Germany's Labour Minister Hubertus Heil and Finance Minister Christian Lindner introduced a draft of a new pension law on Tuesday. They say it will shore up the country's ailing pension system. The legislation aims for the federal government to create a fund worth 200 billion euros by the mid-2030s. Investment gains from the fund will be used to help support the country's strained pension system. The government says that will help prevent steep increases in Social Security contributions. The German government already spends around a quarter of its annual budget to subsidize the country's pension fund. Now, the challenge isn't just that more Germans are heading into retirement, it's also that pensioners are living much longer. But lawmakers have been reluctant to reform the system because retirement age and contributions are a political issue.
But how prepared are the aging population for this new plan?
Well, many experts would say that the country isn't prepared. Since the early 70s, Germany's birth rate has been below the level needed to maintain the population. For decades, Germany has relied on immigration to help compensate for low birth rates. But that's becoming more polarizing. And experts say the country needs a more holistic approach to help to support solving the demographic challenge. The government and the private sector need to be working together to ensure they can come up with answers. One solution would be to raise the amount of women in the labor market. Right now, around 1 in 2 women work part-time. A higher number of women working full-time would help compensate for retirees. And for that, more accessible and cheaper childcare is needed. Companies will also need to be able to retrain older workers and make it more attractive for them to work beyond retirement age, should they choose to do so. Now, the demographic challenge is a complex issue that affects the whole society, so it will definitely take more than just one government plan to tackle it.
Let's switch to the markets now, see what our expectations coming from there.
Well, any European markets are expected to remain little changed from yesterday. Traders will be paying close attention to testimony by U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell in Congress on Wednesday and Thursday. The U.S. Central Bank will also present the Beige Book, its economic report, later today. But we could see muted trading until Friday when U.S. jobs data is released. That could provide more clues about the next interest rate cut. Cryptocurrency investors will also be watching Bitcoin, which hit an all-time high of over $69,000 on Tuesday. They will be looking at how much the largest cryptocurrency retreats from that record.
All right, Chip, thank you so much. Interesting cryptocurrencies in the news around the world these days. Okay, now let's come back to Africa, where we see attention growing concerns about the potential impact of climate change on South Africa's agricultural sector. Recent years have seen the country grappling with a series of natural disasters, including the current heat wave affecting parts of the nation. Experts fear that climate change could exacerbate these challenges, leading to price inflation on agricultural products. Well, our South African correspondent, Innocent Semusa, has more.
Vegetable company farm workers are in the midst of harvest time. A good quality product is set to hit the market. However, it all depends on Mother Nature. Climate change is accelerating with more extreme weather ranging from heat waves, drought to floods. This indicates long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns. 34-year-old green beans farmer Sophie Musabeni is feeling the impact of climate change.
Especially for me as a farmer, I'm so disappointed with the climate exchange because there's a shortage of rain, and when it rains with a hailstorm, then it destroys my crops.
This has forced her to adapt.
So I bought a bigger pump, but we are having also a problem of load shedding. So sometimes there's no electricity and I don't have anything that I can use to support the pumps that I bought.
Recently, Stats SA reported a decline in agricultural production for the fourth quarter of 2023.
The strongest drawdown in terms of contribution came from agriculture, having went down with contribution negative 0.4 of a percentage point.
In a quest to address climate change and food security, the Mangosuthu University of Technology is partnering with Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University.
The first thing that we are working on is, number one, to develop a manifesto where young people in particular are going to commit themselves on how they are going to address all these issues of energy, water, food, and climate change. We're going to be hosting a delegation of more than 80 students from the US, and we are sending invitations to all our more than 30 partners.
Well, the climate change bill is currently before Parliament, and it aims to develop an effective climate change response and a long-term just energy transition to a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy and society in South Africa. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Thank you, Innocent. We move to Egypt, where the central bank there has hiked interest rate by 600 basis points at an unscheduled meeting, for that matter, as it looks to ease the dire shortage of foreign exchange in the country and gets a new multi-billion-dollar loan from the International Monetary Fund. The move takes the key rate to 27.25% and may signal a devaluation of the Egyptian pound is imminent. The central bank also says that the unifying nation's exchange rate is crucial. The currency's rate at bank is about 30.9 against the dollar, but it trades significantly weaker, between 40 and 45 on the black market. The pound's official value was a little changed after the announcement. And the IMF has encouraged Egypt to tighten monetary policy to counter inflation of almost 30% and adopt a more flexible official exchange rate. The Monetary Policy Committee said it had decided to accelerate the monetary tightening process in order to fast-track the disinflation path and ensure a decline in underlying inflation. In Zimbabwe, talks are on restructuring the country's $18 billion debt, and it's still on track even after the United States paused its involvement in the discussions. This according to the Finance Minister, Mithuli Nkube. The discussion, led by the African Development Bank President, Mr. Akinwumi Adesina, and Mozambique former leader, Joaquim Chissano, are continuing. On Monday, the United States announced that in addition to withdrawing from the negotiations, it has imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe's leaders. Now time to go to the crypto space. That's the biggest news in the world now. We head from Berlin to Germany in Nigeria. Ladi Williams. Ladi, I mean, the crypto is I don't know if to call it on fire. The Bitcoin is doing so well, even though it's dropped from its new record high.
Yes.
But everybody's talking about cryptocurrency and Binance.
And it happens every time. Every bull market, that's when everybody starts talking about Bitcoin.
Is it a plan?
But nobody talks about Bitcoin.
Is that an intentional thing?
It's just FOMO, you know, at the end of the day, because nobody talks about Bitcoin when it's extreme fear.
Yes, we had Bitcoin at 14,000,
16,000 happened.
Nothing happened to
Nobody was
Binance
talking
then.
about it.
Nothing happened to cryptocurrency.
Yeah. But now there's a bull market. Everything is happening
and we don't even have the halving yet.
No halving. Just I think next month, and you know, definitely. But a lot is happening, and quite interesting what's happening with Egypt there, because 600 basis points.
Yeah, and we thought 400 was high.
Basis points. We thought that was really high, but 600, that's a record.
But
at
it's
this
almost
point.
On the same level at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Even whether it's 600 or 400, we're both at 27.7.
But it's quite interesting what's happening with African currencies at this point. We see the central bankers, you know, raising rates to record highs, but the currencies are still struggling. Even Egypt is struggling with inflow of dollars, you know, at this point.
The shilling in Kenya, also the same thing.
So Africa needs to find some kind of solution, you know, at this point, because our currencies are really struggling.
Yeah.
But let's look at Bitcoin now, the currency that's shining. At this point, 66,000, did touch 69,000, then fell quickly, you know, from that level. And we also heard that Ethereum, that touched about 3,900 and dropped immediately. So they just seem to be touching those highs and coming down almost immediately, you know, at this point. Let's look at the top stories this afternoon. We see Binance there suspending transactions on the Solana network. In a recent development, we saw the crypto exchange announce that they're suspending withdrawals of Solana amid a high network activity. So if you're not able to withdraw Solana from the exchange, that's traders there. You know why now. They've suspended withdrawals for now. Then also we see other stories there. The Thai SEC requirements for digital assets, they've raised that at this time, meaning that if you're a digital asset operator in Thailand, the Security Exchange Commission is saying you need about 100 million baht to be able to operate as a cryptocurrency exchange, you know, in that country. That was raised from about 50 million baht to 100 million baht. So we see Thailand there regulating crypto right there in the country, and how crypto exchanges actually work there. Let's bring in Rume Ofi now, financial market analyst. Hello, Rume. Great to have you.
And I said, hello, Ladi. Good afternoon.
Fantastic, Rume. So we're seeing a lot happening right now, and definitely, as Ini said there, when the market is not so good, you don't really hear much about, you know, cryptocurrencies like we're hearing right now. Everybody's talking about Bitcoin now because it hit, it's touched the previous high, you know, at this point. But at the end of the day, when there's a bull market, some people have that issue where they're not able to navigate, you know, when to take profit. And you also have those that have been on the sidelines, FOMOing into the market, you know, blindly. Talk to us about what you're seeing right now.
Yes, thank you very much, Ladi. I said that some days ago on my social media handle. This is the wrong time to buy any cryptocurrency for anyone who wants to listen. I repeat, this is the wrong time to buy into cryptocurrency for anyone who wants to listen, because the market is overbought. And judging from the MV/ROV, which is the market value, realized value, anytime it goes past 18%, the last time it did was in February 2021, the market jumped from 24% to 55%. And right now, the MV/ROV is 19.57%. So I'm telling people that care to listen that the market is going to do very huge pullback, and you can do your DCA, which is dollar cost averaging, or probably your Naira cost averaging. But for now, the noise is too much, and everywhere you go, one of the tail signs for you to know that we are at the peak is when everyone is talking about cryptocurrency. So that's a free nugget for those that are listening for now. So it is really risky, considering all of the uncertainties happening in this world today. This year is a year for the US election, still uncertainty. Who is going to be the president? Is that Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Also, geopolitical tensions still there. China having some very huge challenge with the economy. The US inflation is very strong, sticky. We'll be having Jerome Powell testify to Congress at about 4 p.m. West African time today.
Right.
We're going to see what he's going to achieve in doing that. All of these put together, one need to be careful because volatility is really massive.
Right, and looking at social media earlier, I'm seeing a lot of projections, for Bitcoin. Some are calling for $150,000 Bitcoin. With this run we're seeing right now, some have said $200,000. What are you seeing?
All of the speculations are obviously going to come, but the reality is, even though we are using that, even though we are putting that for the Bitcoin ETF, which is having to bring in cash flow, let's also not forget the fact that some of these asset managers, when they are when they are some of their assets, if they take a whole lot of risk on their asset, they will have to slow down at some point in the level at which they get digital asset like Bitcoin and a couple of others when they are approved. So that is going to, when the flows start going down, it is going to spell doom for the industry. I'm not being a bear here, but I'm just stating the obvious. You can notice that even gold is actually increasing. Popularly, gold is usually said as a proper store of value or a hedge against inflation. I know Bitcoin is going to get there, but for now, I don't think it's something that want to really put all our eggs on as a basket.
All right.
So a lot is going to happen, but for now, let's take it easy so that we don't get our hand bumped.
All right. We heard it from roommate there. Manage your FOMO. That's your fear of missing out, when the market is rallying. Thank you so much, roommate Ofi, financial market analyst. Thank you.
Thank you, Ladi. It was a pleasure.
All right, there you have it. Gold rallying, digital gold, according to some, that's Bitcoin, is also rallying at the same time. So which gold are you going for?
Yeah, well, you make your choice and measure your risk.
Exactly.
Very, very important.
Yeah. Some like the safe haven asset. That's, yeah.
Yeah, stay safe.
Right.
And you don't make a lot of money, though.
Yeah, so you have to manage that.
All right, Ladi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's it on the program, Business Incorporated for today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can always repeat this experience when you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/channelsweb, and you can watch it anytime. Ladi will be back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I'll be back. Well, I'll see you tonight, and I'll see you 1 p.m. tomorrow. I'm enjoying